Karen. Happy birthday to you. I wish you health, also inspiration for your new projects, happiness, luck, also a lot of new friends. I wish you happiness and may all your wishes come true. So for your birthday, I'm reading a story from a book, Fairy Tales for Fearless Girls. I'm also wearing your bracelet that you gave me. So the story is How Little Molly Whuppie Outwitted the Giant. A long time ago, in England, there lived a man called Mr. Whuppie and his wife, Mrs. Whuppie, who had too many children to feed. So they took their three youngest girls, Katie, Jane, and Molly, and left them all alone in a deep, dark wood. Holding hands, the three little girls wandered right in there, hoping to find their way home, but soon they were hopelessly lost. They were frightened and hungry, and it was getting dark. Just then they spotted a light shining through the tangle of trees. "Look over there," said Molly Whuppie, who was the youngest but was as brave as a lion. "It must be a house. Perhaps they'll give us a bed for the night and some food." So they knocked on the door and were amazed when it was opened by a woman who was enormously tall and enormously white. "What do you want?" she asked, peering down at them. "We're lost and hungry," Molly replied. "Can we come in and have a bite to eat?" "I wouldn't dare," said the woman. "My husband's a giant, and he will kill you and eat you all up if he finds you here." "Please," begged Molly. "We're so hungry. Let us stay for a while. We'll go before your husband comes home." The giant's wife took the girls in, and they just sat down by the fire with some bread and milk when the giant crashed through the door. He was so tall that his head scraped the ceiling, and his hands and feet were as big as shovels. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," boomed the giant. "I smell the blood of some earthly ones. So, wife, who have we got here?" "Oh, just some wee lassies," his wife replied. "They'll be gone once they've finished the snack." The giant gave a great big gap-toothed grin. Then he slumped down in his chair and ate a huge supper, enough for 20 usual-sized men. Afterwards, he blushed loudly and started at the three terrified girls. "You poor things," he growled. "You look frightened and exhausted. Stay a few days, I insist. I'm a great baker, and I will bake you something nice tomorrow." The giant's wife led them up some wooden stairs to a dusty attic, where there was a great wooden bed. "Sleep tight," she cackled as they climbed in. Then she stomped back downwards. Although they were very scared, they were really, really tired, and soon all the three girls were sound asleep, except for Molly Whuppie. She guessed that the giant was up to mischief, and quiet as a mouse, she slipped out of bed. She overheard him in the kitchen downstairs, chuckling as she sharpened his carving knife. "He means to eat us all after all," Molly whispered to herself. She knew that there was no time to lose, and she woke her sister up. They had to escape before the giant came back upstairs. Molly thought quickly. If she could just distract him and lead him away from the stairs and the front door, they might have a chance. Clever Molly took one of her shoes and hurled it out of the attic window so it landed with a thump outside. She heard the giant muttering that there might be a tasty deer out there. He stomped around to the back of the house to look. Hand in hand, Molly and her sister crept downstairs at the front door, then ran through the woods. They found a curious bridge made of single hair, but decided to cross further downstream. By morning, they'd reached a fine-looking house which turned to belong to the king. "We can't go in there," Katie said. "We haven't brushed her hair and you only have one shoe." However, Molly had other ideas. Without even stopping to knock on the door, she walked straight in and told the king their sad tale. Well, little Molly Whuppie," the king said at last. "You're a very brave girl, no doubt. But this particular giant had been courting my people for years, and I think you could do even better. Go back and steal the great sword that hangs above the giant's bed. If you do this, he'll be less of a danger to the people, and I'll give your eldest sister, Katie, anything that is within my power to grant." "I will certainly try," replied Molly Whuppie bravely. The next day, wearing new boots given to her by the queen, Molly traced her footsteps back into the giant's house, and while the giant was out hunting and his wife wasn't looking, she hid under his enormous bed. She waited and waited without making a sound until the giant and his wife had eaten their supper and were asleep, snoring loudly. Then she crept out, stood silently on the bed, and reached over the giant. Just as she grabbed the sword, it crackled against the headboard and woke the giant up. Molly ran as fast as she could until she reached the bridge made of just one hair. She was so light that she could run straight across, but the giant was too heavy to follow. Left behind, she shrieked with rage and shook his plate-sized fists. Molly gave the giant sword to the king. Katy declared their wish for the hand in the marriage of the king's eldest son, whom she had been getting to know while Molly was stealing the sword. Katy and the king's eldest son were soon happily married, but the king hadn't finished with Molly yet. Well, little Molly Whuppie, he said with a big smile. You've done very well, but you can do even better. Go back and steal the magic coin purse that the giant keeps under his pillow. If you do this, your middle sister, Jane, can marry my middle son if she wants to. I will certainly try, replied Molly Whuppie, and off she went. Once again she crept back into the giant's house and hid until the giant and his wife went to bed. Then she slipped her hand under the giant's pillow. Just as she snatched the purse, the coins inside clinked and woke the giant up. Once again, Molly ran as fast as she could until she reached the bridge of a hair, and once again she skipped across while the giant stood shaking his fists. Molly gave the purse to the king. Shortly afterwards, Jane and the king's middle son were married. The king had one final task for Molly. Well, little Molly Whuppie, he said. You have done very well, but you can do even better. Go back and steal the gold ring that the giant wears on his finger. If you do this, you can marry my youngest son. I will certainly try, replied Molly Whuppie, ready for her toughest test yet. Back Molly went into the giant's house and hid under the bed until the giant and his wife were snoring. Then she picked up the giant's hand and as gently as she could, Giant woke up and grabbed her hand. Got you at last, Molly Whuppie, he raged. All this time you won't get away. I baked you some delicious cakes, but you rudely ran away without even trying them, and then you stole my sword and purse. Now, what will your punishment be? If it were up to me, Molly said quickly, I'd put you in a sack with a cat and dog. I'd add a needle, thread, and scissors and hang the sack in the wall. Then I would go into the woods and find a big stick and beat the sack to teach you a lesson. An excellent plan, young Molly, the giant smirked. Then that is exactly what I'll do to you. So the giant fetched a sack and put Molly inside with a cat and dog and a needle, a thread, and scissors. Then he hung the sack in the wall, leaving his wife to guard it with her life. He sent off into the woods. Oh, what an amazing sight! Cried Molly from inside the sack. Why was it? Asked the giant's wife. The most beautiful thing I have ever seen, said Molly. I want to see it too, begged the giant's wife. But you'd have to be in the sack with me, replied Molly. I daren't take the sack down, warned the giant's wife. Then I'll help you up into it, said Molly. Molly took out the scissors and cut a hole in the sack, only just big enough for her to squeeze through. Then she jumped out, holding the needle and thread. Molly helped the giant's wife into the sack, then she sewed the hole behind her until it was closed. From inside the sack, Molly could hear the wife complaining that she couldn't see anything. Molly took no notice and hid behind the door. Before long, the giant came home and 3 had sunk in his head. He took the sack down from the wall and began to beat it. Stop, you fool! His wife cried. It's me, your wife. It's me inside. However, over the loud sounds of the cat's mouse and the dog's howls, the giant couldn't hear what she said. It was only when he spied Molly running out the door that he stopped beating the sack. He chased after Molly once again until she reached the bridge of hair. And again, she leapt across, light as a feather, standing the giant on the other side. You stole my sword, purse, and ring, he raged. And now you tricked me into beating my wife. Woe betide you, Molly Whuppie, if you ever come anywhere near it again. Don't worry, laughed Molly. I'm never coming back. Then she took the ring to the king. I'm sure your son is very nice, but I don't think I want to be anyone's wife, she told him. However, I would like a job. The king made her his new explorer-in-chief. Molly Whuppie roamed the vast kingdom for the rest of her days, defeating monsters and discovering all sorts of new things and interesting treasure to bring back to the king. She never saw the giant again, but stories of her cleverness and courage were still being told for many years to come. Happy birthday, Karen. Have a nice birthday.